When I was younger, 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And my doctor said to me, we are going to stack the deck on your side.
Hi, Richard. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Mark. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great also. Great day.
I am excited to have you on the show. Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. I have to start out by asking, what does peak performance mean to you?
So for me, peak performance is doing whatever it takes to get the job done and putting your whole heart and soul into it. And when you've done what you can, when you can slide a little bit, but it's being number one at what you can do. In my particular case, peak performance, because I have a financial background, is making sure that the financial information that all of our clients get gives them exactly what they need in order to make some great business decisions and be able to make things simplified for them. So that's pretty much for me what peak performance means.
Talking about putting your heart and soul into doing what we want to do or what we should be doing or what we're doing, so much easier said than done. Why do you think so many people have trouble with that?
It's really interesting because it's a little challenge for me. When I was a kid, I was in the grocery store trying to figure out how much was this going to be when we got to the register. My mom played that game with me. So like math, numbers, that was something that was just in my DNA from day one. So as I moved into my career, I just assumed everybody was like that. And then I started realizing that's not the case. And I think one of the things is that we don't really know what to do. We don't have the knowledge that we need. We don't have the education. We have the desire, and some may not have a desire. But if you have the desire and you don't know what to do, it's as if you didn't have the desire at all. So to me, we really try to make sure that our clients and everybody that we interact with has a good understanding of what they want to accomplish. And we try to simplify everything for them, at least in our marketplace, in the financial and cash flow and management.
You have 40 plus years of experience in the financial world. Now you are helping people be active participants of their financial stories instead of just spectator. What inspired you to do that?
For me, I didn't have a mentor. I struggled, just like I was saying before. I struggled through it. It was trial and error, and some of those errors were real painful. I remember when I graduated from college and I'm a CP, I'm an accountant now, and I go to my first accounting job, and I could not believe how many mistakes I would make. Everything I looked at, I was making a mistake. I never made mistakes. But they say you learn from mistakes. Well, after a while, I thought I was a genius because I kept on making so many mistakes. To me, being able to have the passion for what I want to do has really been helpful for me. And it makes me really understand. So trial and error was a big piece of it. And then I just wanted to give back to the community. I have a real heart for a couple of areas. I love kids. I think children need to learn more about finance. Adults need to know more about finance. I work with an organization in the medical field, and I learned that early intervention was the most important way of trying to solve something. So my whole concept here is let's get early intervention and start teaching the youth at the youngest age a little bit about finance. And maybe it will be a little more in their DNA. And so that's, I think, why people struggle. You think of finance budgets, everybody gets afraid. It's really not that difficult.
I think we all are raised with some type of a weird relationship with money. Most of us come from average middle class, lower middle class families where we see our parents struggle and we have this complicated relationship with it. The school system doesn't do a really good job at talking about money. Money in society is almost a taboo topic to talk about. So it's no wonder that kids don't get educated in it properly. And when they turn into adults, they don't know much about it. So I love the fact that you are reaching out to a younger generation, kids, and trying to teach them about it at the beginning of their life, as opposed to midlife or whenever everybody else gets to it. Tell us a little bit about how you're doing that.
So what we put together is we put together a workbook that has 24 different topics, and it's for ages grades 1 through 6. We actually tested it at a school with kids, and it was a really good success. They loved it. We make it fun for them. We give them an idea, let them get engaged to it. I think what you said is so incredible, is that you can learn math. But learning math, let's say, is similar to learning about the inner workings of a car. So I can make that car work. But if I don't learn how to drive, that car means nothing to me. So what we teach in school is math. We don't teach the practical aspects of what we do with those things. So our objective was to make these lessons that would be so great for these young children, early intervention. And a few things we found out. One is we would hand it to a parent or a teacher and say, what do you think about this? And they would look at it, they'd thumb through it, and they would say, I wish I had this when I was a kid. And we actually have had some adults get the book for themselves. Because if they know their children are learning this, they need to know too. And we're trying to take it from that stage. And then we're also going to continue with the same concept and the same table of contents at different age groups. And the second area that I have a tremendous passion for is the individuals that are not really in the normal trend of society and there's reentry. You may have the foster children or individuals from prison. We want to put a program together for them. So when they come out, we stack the deck on their side. When I was younger, 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And my doctor said to me, we are going to stack the deck on your side. So I went through a bone marrow transplant. We were able to do that in a medical aspect. It's harder to do it in a finance because it's more theory. But that's what we want to do. We want to do everything we possibly can to stack the deck on their side. It was done for me. I'm alive, I'm well, and I feel great. And we want to do the same thing for finance. And I really do have a phenomenal passion for it because I love helping people understand their finances. And it's beyond finances. It's part of what we do every day. Everybody uses money. So we need to know how to do that.
Almost like everything else in life, tactically doing certain things are easy, but they become difficult when the emotions get associated with it. If we want to lose weight, tactically we know eat less and move a little, but we have emotional relationship with foods that almost always stops us from losing that weight. When you are working with adults, what do you think is their biggest problem or biggest challenge when it comes to their relationship with money?
That's a loaded question. There's so many. One, I can tell you right now, a lot of individuals, maybe a little older now in their 50s and 60s, they probably have their parents that came from the Great Depression. And there's this concept of I'm a depression baby. If you're a depression baby, I can't imagine what that was like. You can't imagine what that was like in terms of what it was right here in the United States at that time. There were people that learned not to spend anything, that total austerity. So there's this mindset that they were taught. It's not a good thing to take care of yourself. It's not a good thing to go ahead and give yourself a reward. And it goes to the extreme sometimes. We see people that they have no concept and they're investing or spending money on things personally on their business, and you're looking at it, you go, do you realize that you're spending $5,000 a year to go get coffee or whatever it may be? Now, if they have the money and they say, that's my luxury, that's the only thing I do, great. But if they don't, and they're taken away from the ability to pay their rent or to grow their business, it's not so good. So I think a lot of the emotion comes from the way we were raised. And you said it before, nothing's more sacred than talking about money, it seems. People can talk about almost everything else, it's okay. But when you start talking about how much money you make, or if you owe taxes, or you have a problem, alimony, or whatever it may be, child support, people just don't want to talk about it. There's some form of an embarrassment. There should be no embarrassment. In our world and what we do, there's absolutely no judgment. I'm just like everybody else. I have my own small business. I have the same struggles everyone else has. Sometimes I want to go out and spend money on something do I need it? It's not just about need. If you can afford it and it fills your goals, then I think it's great.
I think there was some study that I read about a long time ago that people were more comfortable talking to other people about debt plans than they were willing to talk about their money. I recall something like that.
It's pretty interesting. You're right. Let's plan for our death. Let's make sure we have our gravesite.
Exactly. And they're willing to talk about their money. It's crazy.
Plan to live, not to die.
Exactly. On one hand, you talked about children of depression era people who have the tendency to just hold on to every penny and not understand the importance of investing and spending on the right things. But on the other hand, we also have people, especially in America today, who are in loads and loads of debt only or simply because they have convinced themselves somehow, I deserve this, I deserve that. And they're taking loans out, putting themselves in debt as a result of it. How does one go about striking a balance between the two?
Another great question. The individuals that tend to do that, in our experience, really have another issue involved that they don't necessarily care gets written off or somebody else gets hurt. And it's a big problem because when you think about forgiveness of debt, there's reasons why people get into debt. And there are valid reasons why people get into debt. Let's say you had a medical issue and you didn't have insurance and you had to take everything you have. That's a different issue versus somebody that came from wealth and just blew it all in some frivolous manner. So the first thing is we really need to understand, where did it come from? What's in the root of that? Why are you that way? And it's interesting. And if I have an hour meeting with a client, it's not unusual for 10 minutes we're talking about numbers and 15 minutes we're talking about them. So it's really about people. In some ways, we we're like a counselor beyond financial counselor. We're there to say, okay, let's dig into this. Let's understand. Do you realize that you're hurting yourself? And you know what's more important than anything is when you realize you're hurting someone you love by acting in a way that's not a good fiduciary responsibility for your own funds. That's when people change. When they realize that, oh, wait a minute, this is going to affect my mom or my wife or my spouse or my child. And we know that's clear with children. People will do almost anything for their children. And that's why we started from that direction.
Would you say that is the most important mindset shift that one needs to stay taking control of their finances? Or is there something else that you see is also very effective?
I think finances is one component of life. And I think it's just like physical health, mental health, financial health, spiritual health, whatever your beliefs are. It's just another aspect of it. And if any, as we say, anything to an extreme, your strength to your extreme becomes your weakness. It's just trying to really strike a balance and recognize that, listen, I have to put some effort in here. It's typically, we see extremes. Either it's 100% about keeping the money, like the depression child, or it's 100% the other way, I don't care. Those are the two extremes that are the danger zone, so to speak. But if you're balanced in your day-to-day life and you recognize I need a little bit of everything, then I think it would work out much better. So yes, I would agree that's an issue. But when someone's in front of us, they want help. Otherwise, they wouldn't come to us. So they may not know what help they're going to get. They may come for one thing and they walk out with something else.
You work with children, you work with individual adults, you also work with businesses. How do you define financial security for individuals and businesses?
So one of the big things on the business side is we have a goal in order to make sure that we bring value to the stake. And so the stakeholder is not always a stockholder. It could be a number of things. If you own a private business and you're for profit, it's most likely you're the stockholder. So you want to have enough funds. And so when you think about the business side of it, the business side really is strictly a tool for the individual side. If you're in a privately owned family type of business, which is where we do spend a lot of our time with clients, it's a lifestyle business and they need that in order to maintain their way of living for their family. And so whatever we do on the business side rolls through to the personal side. So they're totally connected on that way. If someone has a passion in business, maybe in a not-for-profit or something else, but it's not necessarily about profit. They have to benefit corporations. And so that fills a different need in them. So it gives them personal satisfaction. It just empowers them to think clear. I think that's a major distinction. And our overall objective is for our clients to build their wealth. So maintain and build wealth. And how do you do that? So a big part of it, now getting down to black and white with accounting and taxes, is to minimize taxes or some. However, it's very interesting because we can make the case that cutting your taxes may not necessarily be the best way to build your wealth. Because if you make some more money and pay some more taxes, it may put you in a financial position where you can go ahead and get some investments because you can get lines of credit. And those investments could possibly give you more wealth than if you just reduced your taxes. So we look at the whole picture. So the business and individual are 100% connected, and you have to look at both of them together.
You said you work a lot with smaller family businesses, and almost always some of those businesses have a bookkeeper who's using books, who's just basically responsible for invoices coming in and expenses going out. And you look at their P&L statement or you look at their statements and it just basically says revenue. It doesn't have any clarification on what is coming from where. They don't have the visibility of all the details so that they can make data-driven analysis. How do you get these companies to get visibility on their finances? And tell us a little bit about why it's even important for growth.
So the very first thing we do, if we have an existing client, someone's in business, is we look at what's called the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts is a listing of all the different buckets, if you will, where you would say, I spent money in rent, I spent money in utilities or payroll. And so let's talk about the revenue side. If you have multiple, let's just simplify it. Say in our practice, we may want to know how much do we generate revenue in tax preparation and accounting and bookkeeping, something like that. So the very first thing is we look at the chart of accounts and we say, okay, let's, just like Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. What information would be helpful for you at the end of a period of time that would give you visibility to make better business decisions? And we build backwards. So we say, okay, if you knew that 50% of your revenue was coming from this one source, what would you do differently? Maybe they wouldn't do anything differently. Maybe they would double down on it. So we go backwards. We say, we have to paint the picture. Forget accounting, forget bookkeeping, forget taxes, forget chart of accounts. Let's just take a piece of paper, blank piece of paper. Let's write down, you tell me what you need. And then what we do is we're like a transformer. We take that information and we establish a chart of accounts that's going to give them that information. And when you have visibility, you can make better business decisions. And the biggest tool that we use in visibility is what we call our cash flow model. In our cash flow model, we take month by month, we look at the history and we also forecast into the future, 12 to 24 months. And what that means is we are predicting how much money you're going to have in the bank every month. And we're predicting how much revenue, and I don't want to get boring in accounting terms, but how are you doing in the business in their language? And we look at that document, it's a spreadsheet. We look at that document every month, and that's what gives them the visibility to say, oh, wait a minute. I knew, for example, I was going to go negative in July because that's my weak time and I have all my revenue in January and February. So I'm okay if I have a minus. That means what? I need a line of credit. I have to go to a bank in advance. I have to make sure I can use it. And it's okay. Or I have to loan the business money. That's okay. That's part of your plan. We hate the word budgets because budget means restrictive. It's like a diet. Diet means restrictive. That's your health environment. Diet just means how you eat. A budget basically means how you spend. So what we say is forget about budget, forget about spend. Let's talk about utilizing your funds in order to invest in your future. So we change the paradigm. We have to change the paradigm. And when someone gets it, it's like magic. I'll be honest with you. All of a sudden, after a few months, they take this one piece of paper, they look at it, and they are telling me how their business is doing. I don't have to tell them anymore. And that gives me goosebumps. I'll be honest with you. It may sound a little crazy. That's what it is.
You are famous for saying that vulnerability is key to making financial sound decisions. Why do you believe that?
Because you have to be open for change. You have to be willing to do something different. If you want to grow a muscle, you have to break it, right? In order to grow, you have to break it. Anything that's worthwhile has to die before it gets a plant. Put a seed in the ground. It has to die to become a bigger plant. So you have to put yourself in a vulnerable position in order to be able to go to another level. And if you don't want to, that's okay if you're satisfied in achieving your objectives as the stakeholder. If you're getting that in your day to day, then this isn't for you. You don't want to grow. That's okay. That may be stable. I would submit, though, it's very hard to be stagnant. You either grow or die. It's very hard. And if you're not constantly investing, you won't necessarily grow. So vulnerability is the key to growth.
And would you say approaching the way you do, where you even in the very first meeting, literally talking 10 minutes about money, but really having that conversation with the client, digging deep, understanding them, you think that is what allows them to be vulnerable with you?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that I just love about what I do. So we're not a transactional business. What does that mean? Transaction is prepare a tax return, put together a P&L balance sheet. That's not what we do. It's a tool we use. But what we do is we work with people and getting to know that person. When I sit down with them, and as a matter of fact, today, okay, I'm in Tampa. We've just had this tremendous storm, and I have an older tax client. She calls up yesterday. I need to get my taxes done. The IRS gave an extension, but I'm trying to figure out a way that we can send somebody to her house to get her tax stuff so she can get the tax return done by the next Tuesday, because that's a big thing for her. And it's just, I do that with everyone. It doesn't matter if what they pay. It just shows you care. The accounting world is very different today than it was when I started over 40 years ago. We don't have as many accountants. A lot of them are retiring. It was tough during the pandemic. And so most of the accounting firms, CPA firms, are more transactional. That's not us. I don't ever want to just be transactional because anybody can do that. We want to make a difference in people's lives. We want them to know that we care about them.
We talked about on an individual basis, on an individual level, how some people don't want to spend any money because they're afraid, because they've been conditioned and raised that way to hold on to every penny. And then there are some people who spend too much money, who need to be told to reel in. On the same level, on the same sense, at a business level, how does a business owner strike the right balance between financial risk and growth opportunities?
Now, depends a lot on the type of business. And I don't just mean type, let's say size of business. So when we deal with family owned, privately held, you usually have one decision maker, maybe two, maybe a family, couple, but basically it ends up being one person. So that becomes very difficult because it's about that one individual personality. They're more risk adverse. They're going to be more conservative than I'm trying to tell them, hey, take a little more risk. Or I lay it out. The way my language is, if it was me, this is what I would do. I don't ever want to tell somebody what to do. But if it was me, this is what I would do under these circumstances. And if they see it as an opportunity and want to give it a shot, we help try that for them. When you're dealing with a larger business, that's a lot more where we can take a look at what you just asked about, having that balance between risk and stability, let's say. And the key to that is having a really strong internal financial person. And it could be outsourced. And it's like we call it sitting as the seat of the CFO. And the president or the P or the chairman, the senior person, they really work with the CFO. And the CFO is the one that is really making more of those decisions. And so the key is putting a balance, cash flow report, forecast out, and monitoring it closely every single month from a high level, and internally getting the internal controls straight so that the key performance indicators, the KPIs, are very clear. So for example, if we know that our gross margin dropped 0.1% over a 12-year rolling average, that means something if we're a growing company. It should never dip. It's not a lot, but it's important, and you have to look at that. So putting KPIs in order, and one of the things I try to do as best as I can, it's again based on the individuals, we like to bring Wall Street to Main Street. So the same tools that we would use in a CFO position for a multi-million-dollar business, we try to bring to the smaller business on a lower scale. And when they get that, they're telling us what they need to do. And that's, for lack of a better word, that's like magic.
You have been in this industry for so long. And when somebody has been doing something for a very long time, you start to develop a sixth sense, right? There's an old saying, when you cook a pot of pasta, you don't take every strand of pasta to check if it's done. You just take one strand out, you press it, and the whole pot is done. What are some telltale signs that a company has when you meet with them that tells you right off the bat they're running inefficiently? And how do you go about telling them that to address it?
Okay, so you can learn a lot by just looking at a tax return and a financial statement. So the very first thing I will do is take a quick look. And if you see something that's just like totally whacked out, like for example, let's say that they're bleeding the company, they're taking every dollar out of the company and it's running on a shoestring. Pretty much anybody would look at that and say, that doesn't look right. Why are you doing that? Bad decision making. How do you determine bad decision making? And poor leadership. A couple of things. High turnover. If you have high turnover in your company, and what I mean by that is employees leaving, being terminated, or leaving on their own, and you have a constant revolving door. First of all, not only is your cost to hire so high and you're constantly training, that is a good sign that there's something not right here. Policies and procedures, not having anything documented. Everything is verbal. If I want to know what are the responsibilities of my job, what's my job description? I don't have a description. I've been told by companies, we all know what to do. We don't need a description. Until 2 years later, they come back and say, you remember we talked about descriptions? We really do need them now because we're so big. Nobody really knows what the other person is doing. So that's another key point. Your management team. How well does your management team work? Do they do outside events? Not that anybody has to do an outside event. Do they like each other? How often do they get together as a group and have planning sessions? Do they plan every year? Is there a budget or a cash flow management reporting? How often do they get financial statements? These are the kind of things that are in my initial interview. And how often do they meet their current financial advisor? If there's someone outside, CPA or some other one. The other thing is, I ask this question, who do you go to when you have a very important decision to make? And what decision did you make 6 months ago that if you made today, had to make today would be different? Or what decisions do you have in 6 months from now that are really important? When you have that interaction with individuals, as you and I have talked before, you can tell this person is real. You can tell they're being transparent. And as soon as they don't want to share with you, we've got to find out what that is. And I will dig because we will not take on clients if they don't want to share with us because we know ultimately we won't be able to help them.
Talked a lot about leadership. You talked a lot about companies that have certain traits. When they don't exhibit it, it almost leads to poor decision making and inevitable doom if they don't get the right help at the right time. What are some other important traits of a strong financial leader?
I'm sure I would guess you've experienced the operations or the sales versus finance internal fights within organizations where they don't get along. The first thing is your CFO needs to be sales minded. They have to understand the sales process. If they're strictly coming from a bean counter perspective, it will most likely create a lot of controversy. And the other thing is that the CFO has to be willing to work with other, let's say, C-level executives or management team, depending on the size, and teach them, give them the information. They need more knowledge. So if your CFO is a teacher, advisor, and is recognizes that they need to understand the entire business cycle themselves, because otherwise they're not capable of making very good decisions. One of the things that I have found in my experience is when it comes to who prepares the budget. That's a good question I ask. Say we have a C-level, we have a business CEO, a couple of senior level people. Who prepares the budget? Does the CFO prepare the budget? Does the leader of that department, if it's sales and marketing or human resources, distribution, whatever it may be, who prepares the budget? And this is really where my education program started. It's 20, 30 years ago, I started this concept. It was because C-level executives didn't know anything about finance. And it's still that way for the most part. So they would say, let the CFO do the budget. Letting your CFO do the budget is basically handing the keys over to the CFO. I would never want somebody to control what I could spend. So the CFO needs to be able to educate and be patient with the individuals that are preparing this information and help them understand it and not get frustrated. They have to work together. I would say that's probably the most important thing. And a CFO, and I'm saying CFO, but senior financial, the bookkeeper, controller, okay, they have to be able to, like I said, work with individuals and have a very open mind.
Do you ever have businesses that are navigating financial difficulties, external factors like economic downturns, and are really in a dire slot? And they're like, Richard, we're not doing right now. What do we do? How is your way to get them out of this whole Titanic mess? Or is it even possible?
It's great. Yeah, I can give you a couple of examples, obviously without saying names of the companies. I had one organization, I think it was about 10 years ago. They were between 7 and 10 million and maybe 40 employees, something like that. And I was brought in because the so-called CFO was leaving. And I say so-called because this individual really was not a CFO. They would just had the role, but they had no education and were really never even had that position before. I sat down with the business owner. I said, what do you want to do? You want to sell a business? You can sell a business. You can probably get 10 million for it. You want to sell the business? No, if I was going to sell the business, I would have done that a while ago. He said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to grow the business. I said, are you willing to invest in the business? Sure. So he was the key for me because he gave me the key. And he said, go ahead. And what we did, and today that company's over 40 million. They have about 120 employees, and their value, I'm sure, is 3, 4 times more than, probably even more than that now. And it takes support from the decision maker, the ownership, when you're dealing with private companies. If you have their support and they believe in you, and it's interesting because I could have, let's say, as an organization, as 3 individuals that run the business. And if one of those 3, even if they only own a small share, does not support it, it will take it down every time. So the very first thing is they have to want to make a change. They have to want to be better, and they have to be willing to go through the pain. And then we put a plan together. And of course, on our end, it has to be something that I'm also looking at and saying, okay, we can do this with you. And this is what it's going to take. A lot of it, there's a lot more to it, like putting a proper team together, having some sort of a process. I don't know if you're familiar with OKRs, objectives and key results. That's something that we use a lot, objectives and key results. It's similar to KPIs or goals and objectives. And so we established a common level that everybody followed. And again, it's so exciting because I think about them. I still see their newsletters every month, and I'm like, I just put a big smile on my face because most people don't know, but I know that we had something to do with that growth. It makes me feel good, and it makes them feel good too.
You're writing books, you're educating children, you're rolling out processes and programs. You are helping individuals, you are helping small businesses. And for big businesses and small businesses, you say the best clients are the ones that hand you over the keys, which also means incredible levels of stress on you because now you got to figure out how to do this. With responsibility comes stress. How do you manage all of these things and still live a healthy, happy life?
It's all about the individuals. Let me share one thing with you quickly. I went to Brazil one year on a trip to help kids, and it was a great experience. We built a corral, and it was just a great experience. And this was sponsored by someone from the United States. However, the leader was Brazilian because the leader was the native that everybody followed. An outsider wasn't going to work. So if I go to a company and it's a turnaround situation where they're in financial dire and we have to turn it around, and I take the lead in the front, generally you got to exit when the turn changes because now you're looked at almost as, oh, he's the one who created all this. And even though it's good, it's not good for everybody in their eyes. So what am I saying? Getting the right team at the client site that they are taught. We educate them to do the work. We don't do the work. I used to do the work, but that's consulting. And now I have shifted more. I'd rather educate you that you can do the work because if I or my team go in and consult, there's a high risk that when we leave, things change. And I believe the measurement of a successful leader is when you leave, nobody even has to call you to ask you a question because everything is still running. And that's hard to do as someone that's a consultant because then you basically are working yourself out of a job. And I know that's the end game. So we start with it as the beginning game. And we want to teach them how to do the work.
As someone who used to be a professional consultant, I know exactly what you mean. But you still never answered my question, which is how do you in your personal life balance all these things out? Because entrepreneurship is hard. And sometimes it affects people at a mental level, at a physical level. Sometimes it affects their relationships. As a veteran who've been doing this successfully for so many years, what are some tips you have for young entrepreneurs so that they could not make the mistakes that maybe you and I or some other people did?
That's great. You're right. I didn't need a question. That was not on purpose. I just got into my other thoughts, and I'm working on it. It's a work in process. And so, a couple of things. I like to run. I've run. I think I'm looking at medals right on my office here. I think I run six marathons, 30 half marathons, and a lot in between. I've had a few physical aspects that have restricted my running a little bit, but I love to get out and get a good jog in, take a deep breath. Oh man, it just gives me. I feel like nobody's around me. I love to go to some sports events, like go see the Tampa Bay Bucks, and that gives me my sports side. It's an interest I have. I do surround myself with good people and I have a lot of business friends. A lot of the people in my business become my friends and I just enjoy spending some time with them. I also need quiet time. I have my own personal belief. I have a time of spiritual every day. I do some reading and I try to fill myself with that. And then if I have other interests as some family, I don't have a ton of family. I got a couple of my sisters that live in New York and we try to talk regularly and spend some time together. So there's the balance. It's the physical, it's the mental. I'm trying to do a little more reading now because I realize that there's a lot of things I want to know and a lot of things I want to learn. The only problem is when I read something I want to then do something about, I got to make sure I don't add something else to my plate.
That's a common problem some of us have. That's why I have to stray away from certain types of books because they will inevitably motivate me to now put on another thing. So I know exactly what you mean.
You have to, it's friends. I'm sorry to interrupt it. It's
Please.
friendship. It's friendship. I have a couple of really good friends. I have one friend that I talk to every single Saturday. Every Saturday, we talk for an hour or two. It's like an accountability thing. We started years ago when we were in a business group together. And there's a book called The Third Opinion. And that book talks about a third party, just a sheer third opinion, nothing to gain, nothing to lose on your decisions. And that's the kind of thing we have every Saturday. And sometimes it gets spirited. I don't agree with you, but we respect each other.
Those are the best relationships because honesty these days is such at a premium cost. The fact that somebody you have known for such a long time and have a deep relationship with and haven't missed a Saturday you've spoken to, and that person speaks up, even though disagree with you, they're doing a service, right? And those are sometimes the best relationships ever because no matter how spirited the conversation goes, it'll end with, okay, I'll talk to you next Saturday. And you pick it up wherever you left off.
And I know I have to be true to myself. So I have to be to him as I want my clients to be to me, transparent, honest, don't hold anything back. Because if I hold anything back, he doesn't get the full story. I practice what I preach. I want to be the kind of person that I want my clients to be for us. I want to be that for other people and for my clients sometimes also. It works both ways. For some of my clients I become clients of them.
40 years in this industry, so many roles, so many clients. And what I call is so many calluses. It comes from experience. And when you develop those calluses, you're not phased by the iron anymore. But a lot of young entrepreneurs who are getting started, they don't have those calluses. They have soft minds and soft hearts. And they develop things like imposter syndrome or, oh, I just got lucky with my first sale and it's never going to happen again. Or they don't understand the ups and downs or the complexities of a small business, right? What would you like to tell them to put their mind at ease if they're suffering from the lack of some of those calluses.
You're not alone, number one. You're not alone. We all struggle. I can't speak for everybody that ever lived, but I can't imagine that anybody that has ever lived, didn't go through struggles, whatever they may be. So if you feel alone, it's really important to try to get somebody, that third party person that you can really have a relationship with. I would say, so learn from others. Doesn't mean that you have to follow what they do, but I personally love to be around young people. Somebody told me a long time ago, if you want to stay young, be around young people. And they make fun of people and I bring up something that was 40 years old. They go, who's that? Yeah, I love it. Oh, I don't care. We have fun. But think about being with somebody that could be a mentor. Find a mentor if you can. Try to get involved with some sort of groups, organizations, trade groups, but somebody that's special to you because you really need to have some form of a model. And recognize that not only aren't you alone, but what you're going through, even though in your eyes it may seem very unique, oh, nobody understands. You'll hear that. I'll hear that a lot. You don't understand. Actually, we don't hear that much anymore. We used to hear that, but people come to us and they understand that we do. Realize that, learn how to express what's going on. Learn how to embrace it. And this is going to sound absolutely crazy for some, but just enjoy it. Because if you're doing something that is struggling, you're on a break. What do they say? Every breakthrough is a breakout. You're on to something. Don't give up. Have perseverance. Believe in yourself and just recognize that you can succeed. And it may not be what you expect. Just try to go with the flow, but stay true to yourself. And a couple of other things, you must be honest, have integrity. Just don't judge people. Be open-minded and recognize that person that has a totally different personality than you may just have some information that can help you become better you.
The world of financial security, financial education, financial consulting, it's a scary world because not only it deals with money, because money is necessary for survival. Who you bring into your business, who you bring into your home as an advisor, as a consultant, as a teacher, has a lot to do with trust. Do you, Richard, have not only the knowledge that you have acquired over all these years serving all these people, there is something about your personality. It's calm, while also it's energetic at the same time. It gives hope, but also somehow centers people. I've had the privilege of speaking to you on more than one occasion. Every time I've done speaking to you, maybe it is naivety, but I walk away feeling a little bit smarter. And you talked about having a mentor look up to. In some ways, when I do these podcasts for selfish reasons, I try to find those people that I can learn from. And the holistic nature of your life, what you have made your life all about, which is not just providing a solution as a consultant anymore, but educating people, not only at a business level, at an individual level, but at a grassroots children's level, tells volumes about the type of person you are. So it's an honor and a privilege to have you on the show and having the opportunity to peek into your mind and understand how you live your life and how you guide other people. Thank you for being on the show. What are some last words you have for our audience members?
First, thank you for that. I do appreciate that. And even though I've been through this a long time, that it's always great to hear that from someone that when they share how they feel, because that I need it too. So I really do appreciate what you said. I would just say the one thing for me in my personal life is I've had so many people that have been there for me, people that I probably have never even met that have been there for me. And I really believe I want to leave something. I want to make my life with a purpose. And I always love to, again, quote Stephen Covey when he talks about to live, to love, to learn, to leave a legacy. And my hope is that I can leave a legacy that will change the way we teach our children and we handle finances, and that we can have a lot more peace, a lot less stress in our day-to-day life, so that we can feel like we can just enjoy and live and continue doing the things that we want and be able to bring value not only to ourselves, but to everybody that we interact with. I really appreciate your time. I felt it's honored to be on your podcast. So I do really appreciate that. And it's great to talk through these things.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.